Hi there, I'm Randy Patterson, and this is Psychology Salon, a channel about psychological issues. If you like this kind of thing, click subscribe. Okay, in this series, I've been asking the question, how do we guide our lives? What compass do we use? And my answer has been that we have multiple compasses, and the trick is to use the right one at the right time. And so far, I've talked about four compasses. Impulse, which is what I feel like doing in the moment. This is usually the worst one, and it's the one that gets people into quicksand in their lives. Social expectation, which sometimes gives us good ideas, but runs the risk of making our life all about conforming. Values, which is probably the most valuable one of the bunch. Rather than saying, what am I tempted to do up front, it asks, what will I be satisfied to have done? And goals, which translates general ideas and values into specific actions. This is where the rubber really hits the road. But there's one compass missing from that list, and that's reality. Because there are necessary actions that don't come from our great lofty values. They're not just what other people think we should do, and often they're not that tempting, but they are necessary. And if we ignore them, our life gets worse. Sigmund Freud identified a bunch of things we now call psychological defenses. These are strategies that we use to avoid looking at harsh or unpleasant realities. Denial, for example, which basically says, yeah, that bit of reality, that just doesn't exist. It's not true. Projection, which says, this kind of unpleasant thing about me, it's not really me, it's you. Rationalization, which says that this action of mine wasn't the product of this motivation that I don't like that much, don't want to admit to. It actually came from something else. It was another reason. There's a bunch of these things. But what they have in common is the idea that often we just don't like looking at reality, which can be inconvenient or unpleasant or scary. But when we don't look, bad things can happen. A lot of psychotherapy is about helping people look at the truth of what's going on so they can actually deal with it. So fine. What are some examples of reality guiding our behavior? There are lots of them. One is that your bladder is only so big, so you need to find a washroom now and then. You're a human being, so you need to eat. That lump, that needs to get looked at. You are getting older. You are out of money. A sedentary lifestyle isn't good for your physical or mental health. No, drinking a quart of gin every day is not sustainable. Yes, it is destroying your relationships. Reality. All of this might conflict with our vision of ourselves, and it all takes time. Much of our life isn't governed by our great spiritual quest or our self-actualization. It's governed by the need to shovel snow off the front walk, or make a meal, or poop. I might want to be a mime artist, and I need to pay the rent. Sometimes you need to pick one because you're not going to get both. I think all of us can identify areas where we try to pretend reality isn't a thing, that we can ignore it and maybe it'll go away. Maybe we can live inside our fantasy about the world. Maybe we can for a while, but sooner or later, we need to confront reality. Sometimes denial of reality can govern our life. Increasingly around the world, there are young adults who have withdrawn from society and from the external world, and who live much the way people with very severe disabilities lived in 1900, completely dependent on caregivers and often confined to a single room in the family home. And many people in this situation are completely aware of their confinement and want to get out of it. Some, though, frame it as freedom. I get to do whatever I want. My meals and accommodation are provided, and I don't have to go anywhere to socialize or work or go to school. I am free. Even though I'm completely dependent on the whims of other people, and my existence is confined to a space the size of a jail cell. Most people in prison have more interaction with the world, more of a role in life, and more diversity in their activities. They leave their cell more often. So is this freedom the reality or a self-delusion? Well, that's just an example. The point is, much of our life is not governed by our grand vision or our passions or our impulses or our desire to keep up with the Joneses. Reality and the denial of reality also finds its way into social policy. For example, the science of climate change is really clear. We know what happens with different concentrations of CO2 and methane in the atmosphere. We know how those concentrations have changed in the past 100 years. We know what the predicted outcomes are. And we know that most of those outcomes are already coming to pass. But it's incredibly inconvenient. To stop it, we would have to change the way we do things, switch our source of energy over to other sources, disrupt all those industries, and spend a ton of money. It's so much easier and cheaper to deny reality and just pretend everything is fine. But if we do that, we're damaging our own future and our children's future, and we're fundamentally degrading the only home we've got. Well, that's a bit of a rant. The point is, reality exists. It does govern much of our life. And coming to terms with reality is often the path forward for us on an individual level. If the liver damage continues, let's say, I'm going to die. If he has hit me 40 times, he's probably going to do it again. If I go on spending this way, I am going to lose my home. If I do not go to class, I am not going to pass this course. Reality. Our values are important. Our goals for ourselves are important. Our culture's ideas about life are sometimes important, even some of our impulses. But some of what governs us isn't about what other people think. And it's not about what we think or wish for. It's about what is reality. And if we cover over that compass and never look at it, things often go wrong. So, 5 compasses. We have to keep them all in sight. And a successful life usually means learning which one to use when. Fortunately, they'll often tell us if they've been ignored for too long. Things will start going wrong with your life. And at that point, we can look at the board and readjust. But if we rely on just one compass, we're sailing for the rocks. There are other videos on this channel on the psychology of everyday life. Click the subscribe button for more. I also have an online course site, psychologysalon.teachable.com, with programs for professionals and for the general public. And my books, How to Be Miserable, 40 Strategies You Already Use, How to Be Miserable in Your 20s, and the Assertiveness Workbook are available from online booksellers. Thanks for watching.